opportunity to hear this gentleman on a TED Circle recording that he made, and it was such an emotional moment. We were then asking him to join. We have a TED Circle that we meet monthly, and so we had a chance to talk to him in person. This gentleman that we're going to hear from shortly, his name's Azim Khamisa. He lives in San Diego, and I was fortunate. I was down there to the Latitude Conference this year in San Diego, and we had a chance to have lunch together. Azim's story, as he'll start telling you, when you talk about having to get through a difficult situation, he is an amazing gentleman. How he has taken a tragic situation in his life and turned it completely around. And the spirit and the energy you feel with Azim is something I've never felt before. So Azim, he's an author, an international speaker. He's a champion for peace. So in the face of unimaginable tragedy, Azim embarked on a journey of transformation. He's touched over 2 million people through his Khamisa Foundation, which inspires youth to embrace nonviolence, forgiveness, and peace building. He's an amazing gentleman. So would you please show the video, and then we'll hear from Azim.
Time now for our Friday Making a Difference report, and the story of a man whose capacity for forgiveness is astonishing. He suffered the worst loss a parent can ever face, and yet he decided to turn his grief into something positive for himself and a troubled young man. Here's NBC's John Larson.
A documentary began the story like this.
14-year-old Tony Hicks shot and killed 20-year-old Khamisa.
A 14-year-old murders a promising young college student for the cost of a pizza and becomes the youngest child in California history charged as an adult with murder and gets life in prison.
It was like a nuclear bomb going off in my heart.
Azim Khamisa, the father of the victim, buried his only son Tariq, according to their Muslim custom. He climbed down into the muddy grave. It had been raining, and they lowered his son's body, wrapped in a white cloth, down into his open arms.
Yeah, I didn't want to live there alone. I stayed there a long time. When something bad happens, you can stop that bad from happening to other people.
But when he finally came up, he did something remarkable.
It is wrong to lie, to cheat.
First, he forgave the family of the killer.
It was a defining moment in my life. Only through that forgiveness,
which in turn helped Azim start the Khamisa Foundation, speaking together to more than 1 million children about the real pain of violence.
And sometimes it scars the soul forever.
Then, Azim visited Tony Hicks, the killer, who had never had a father, and forgave him too.
His forgiveness wasn't something I expected.
Now Azim is lobbying to have Tony released from prison early, like he was his own son. And when he gets out of prison, what do you hope for him?
We'll have a job for him at the foundation.
So you're going to hire him?
Absolutely.
This is the killer of your son?
Yes.
Tony says now he knows what a real father is.
I had a man forgive me for taking the life of his son.
And he will work for that father, and for many who maybe never had fathers, someday, whether he gets out early or not. John Larson, NBC News, San Diego, California.
Now let's hear from Azim Khamisa live coming in virtually. Azim, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time for joining us here. I know you've got a very, very busy schedule, but I'm looking around the room and people are really impressed and emotional.
Well, thank you, Ed, for having me. I apologize for not being there in person, but I want to wish everybody a good conference and a happy Thanksgiving. And it's been 30 years since this tragedy, but when you lose your only child, it never ever goes away. It literally feels like it was last week. There's nothing more complicated for father to lose a child. So I've been an avid writer. I've written 5 books, and as I know, a lot of you are working in creating a better world, working in social services. And I wanted to make this address in a way that can help you working with your clients, victims or offenders, or people in our society that may also be dealing with a loss like mine. As you probably know, it happens a lot. It's not even news today when a young person is killed. I did not know any of this when Tariq was alive. I worked in international finance. I was born in Kenya, educated in England, and I speak a half a dozen languages, so all my work was international. And I didn't even know there were such things as youth gangs. Of course, now I'm a specialist at it. And what really surprised me after Tariq was shot and killed is that I asked, how did we create a society where children kill children? I moved here almost 50 years ago thinking my children would be safer in America than in Kenya, where we were a minority and targeted. So it was ironic that my son, I have a daughter, he was my only son. It's ironic that he was killed on a street in a city that I had chosen for him. He was actually born here. He died at 20. And the question that came to my mind is, how did we create a society where children kill children? We think that we are a civil society, but children killing children is not a mark of a civil society. When you think about it, at Sandy Hook, there's been 400 school shootings since Columbine. And in Sandy Hook, 20 first graders, 6 and 7 years old, were wiped out in a frenzy of automatic gun violence in the richest nation in the world. You may not know this, but The Economist, which is a reputable magazine, surveyed 25 first world countries like ours, England, Germany, France, Japan, and counted all the kids that die as a result of gun violence in those 25 countries. They took the total and multiplied that by 11. That is how many we lose in the United States of America. We lose a young person like my son every waking hour, every day. So sometimes in tragedy, there is a spark of clarity. I practice as a Sufi Muslim, and Sufis are the metaphysical interpretation of Islam, much like the Kabbalahs are the metaphysical interpretation of Judaism, and maybe the Jesuits or the Quakers are the metaphysical interpretation of Christianity. My mom was very spiritual. My dad was a businessman. I grew up with equal emphasis both on my spiritual foundation and my career. And my deepest crisis, what helped me through my tragedy, was not my education in mathematics and finance, although I went to some pretty good schools in England. It was my spiritual foundation. I started meditating when I was 20. I lost Tariq in my early 40s. When Tariq was alive, my meditation practice was an hour. Today it's 2 hours. When I got the shocking news that Tariq had been shot and killed, I was in my kitchen. I know I lost strength in both of my legs as I fell to the ground, hit my head against the refrigerator and curled up in a ball. And the pain was so excruciating, I had my first out-of-body experience. And I read that when victims go through deep trauma, which is unbearable, they often leave their body. And I believe in God, and I believe I went into the loving embrace of God. I don't remember how long I was gone for. And God held me in an embrace for what seemed like a long time. And when the explosion subsided, God sent me back into my body with the wisdom that there are victims at both ends of the gun. It didn't come from my intellect. I don't think us mortals are capable of it. Or my loving heart. It was a download from a higher power. I really didn't understand the significance of that because it was early and I was mired in my own grief. And over the next several months, I learned all of these horrific statistics about how many young people we lose on an everyday basis. So 9 months after Tariq passed away, having learned these horrific statistics, and of course to honor him, I decided to start the Tariq Khamisa Foundation with the mandate to stop kids from killing kids by breaking the cycle of youth violence. And we essentially had 3 goals. Our first goal was to save lives of children. Important to do because we lose so many. Our second mandate was to empower them with the right choices so they don't fall through the crack and get involved with gangs and crimes and drugs and alcohol and weapons. And our third mandate was to teach the principles of nonviolence, of accountability, of empathy, of compassion, of forgiveness, of peacemaking and peace building. And I started with a very simple premise that violence is a learned behavior. The young man that killed Tariq was 14 years old. His name is Tony. You met him on the video. He wasn't born violent. And our kids learn violence from us adults. And I think we owe our young people an apology because we have not created a world for our youth and our children so they can grow up safely and grow up and live in a country like ours that does have a lot of opportunity, but many of them never, ever get there. So what I saw from this download is that my son was a victim of the 14-year-old, and I saw the 14-year-old was a victim of society, of American society. Well, that begs the question, who is American society? Well, it's you and me. Because society do not just happenstance. Every one of us who is an American, and I am a first-generation naturalized American, are responsible for the society we've created. So I felt, as an American citizen, that I must take my share of the responsibility for the bullet that took my son's life. Why? Because it was fired by an American child. You could take the position, he killed my one and only son, he should be hung from the highest pole. Well, how does that make a better society? Who is the enemy here? Is it the 14-year-old who shot and killed my son? Or is it the societal peer pressure that forced many young men and women to fall through the crack and then get involved with crime and drugs and alcohol and weapons? That's the real culprit. Tony joined a gang at the age of 11. And he murdered my son at the age of 14 when he was in 8th grade. At 11, you should be playing with toys and not guns. So soon after I started the foundation, I reached out to Tony's grandfather. You also met him on the video. His name is Ples Felix. Because I was concerned that he probably is going through a lot of grief and pain as I was. Tony lived with his grandfather and calls his grandfather daddy. Ples only had one daughter who only had one son, which was Tony. And I was wondering how he was dealing with this tragedy. And I asked the district attorney that prosecuted my son's case to introduce me to Tony's grandfather. And we met in the public defender's office. And I started the conversation by telling him, I'm not here screaming revenge and retribution because your grandson took the life of my son. Rather, I'm here because I believe we both lost a son. My son passed away. He's dead. He's gone forever. And Tony was the first 14-year-old in the state of California to be tried as an adult. He's now in the criminal justice system. There's nothing you can do to get Tony out of prison. So I'm really here in the spirit of compassion and forgiveness. And my real reason to reach out to you is to ask for your help. Because I founded this foundation to stop kids from killing kids. It's a big job. I can't do this by myself. Will you help me? I would have never have met him had his grandson not taken the life of my son. We are both different. My roots are Eastern. Ples is African American. Although I always kid him about that because I tell him, Ples, I'm the African American. I was born in Africa. You were not. Because he was born in Louisiana and he is a Baptist from the South. So we're different religions. But he was very quick to take my hand of forgiveness. And the first thing out of his mouth was, he said, Azim, thank you for reaching out to me. Ever since I found out that my grandson was responsible for the death of your son, I went into the prayer closet, hoping someday to meet you, to extend my condolences for your loss. So thank you for reaching out to me, and of course, I will help you. That was 30 years ago. We're still together. He's as close to me as my own brother, and he's as passionate about the Tariq Khamisa Foundation as I am. And in these 30 years, the foundation has reached 2 million kids. So with the grace of the universe, we are successfully keeping kids away from gangs and drugs and alcohol and weapons. And also besides that, we improve their SAT scores, we teach them resiliency. And one of the biggest things that we teach is the power of empathy and forgiveness. I remember teaching a class to a 7th grader, and there was a very disruptive kid in my class. And we do lessons on empathy and compassion and accountability and forgiveness. This particular lesson was on empathy, and we have a theme. And the theme is, you don't know me till you walk a mile in my shoes, and I don't know you till I walk a mile in your shoes, because if I do that, I get to know you. And if you do that, you get to know me. And after the class, the homework is, well, go walk a mile in somebody's shoe you don't know. Now, this kid was Hispanic, His name was Alejandro. He went by Alex. And you could tell he was the most disruptive kid in the class. You could tell by his dressing, his walk, his signs that he was definitely going down that path of a wannabe gang member. But somehow this lesson kind of touched him. So the next class was on compassion. And when I asked them who wants to share their homework on empathy, he shut up. He was so animated, he wanted to speak. So I couldn't really avoid him. I'm thinking he's going to ruin the class because he's such a disruptive kid. But he didn't ruin the class. He actually made the class. And he says, I was walking in the hood last weekend, and this kid gave me a dirty, angry look. And the kid giving him a dirty, angry look is African American. And he said the rules of the hood are if a rival gang member gives you an angry, dirty look, you go beat him up. But because he had taught me that you don't know me till you walk a mile in my shoes, I walked up to his kid and said, why are you giving me a dirty, angry look? And the kid said, I'm not giving you a dirty, angry look. I'm angry because my brother was shot and killed right in this spot last night. What did you do? I reached out to him. I told him, I know how you feel because my favorite uncle 6 months ago was also killed in this same spot. Tell me you can't teach empathy. And Alex walks the hood every weekend, not last weekend. What does he do when somebody gives him a dirty, angry look? He reaches out. I can tell you stories after stories after stories. I spoke at the Bishop's School, which is in La Jolla. It's a very expensive private school. And a young lady came up to me afterwards and says, Mr. Khamisa, you changed my life. I said, well, tell me more. So when I was in 7th grade, 13 years old, you came and spoke to my inner city school. I was put in the foster care system at the age of 8. I was so moved with your story at 13, I forgave my biological mother, who I blame for all the pain in my life, and all my foster parents for all the confusion they had caused. She won a scholarship to Bishop because it's a very expensive private school. I've just graduated as a senior with a 4.7, 4.8 grade point average, and I have a free ride at UCLA. And I could see the determination in this young lady. It wouldn't surprise me. That was more of a recent speech, so she's still at UCLA, but it wouldn't surprise me if she doesn't change the foster care system in our country. So it's a big part of my work. Tori Khamisa Foundation has a safe school model, which has 4 programs. The first program is a live assembly with me and the grandfather. We introduce this man's grandson, killed this man's son, and here they are together. Our second is we have a 10-week curriculum where we teach these important socio-emotional skills of resilience and nonviolence, and inspiring them to be nonviolent leaders that are committed to peace building within themselves, within their families, within their schools, within their communities. Because we're not going to wake up one day and find that the world is at peace. We have to proactively work with. We then create a peace club on campus. We have 60 different titles for what it takes to be a nonviolent leader committed to peace. And then we have a mentoring program for those that are on a slippery slope. During COVID, we created a program for teachers because COVID has been as traumatic for teachers as for our young people. And we were invited by UC Berkeley to create a program for parents based on the work that we've done with the kids. We now have a parenting program for parents. So the Safe School model now has 6 different programs. We are delivering exemplary results. We cut suspensions and expulsions by 70%. And we also help them succeed more in an academic way. 5 years after the tragedy, I went to meet Tony because it took me 5 years and thousands of hours of meditation to come eyeball to eyeball with the person who took my son's life. Which is hard to do. I'm sure you can acknowledge that. But I knew for me to complete my journey in forgiveness, at some point I had to come eyeball to eyeball with Tony. I asked the grandfather to join me with my first visit with Tony. I told him I need some alone times because you're his grandfather, and I have some tough questions for him because he was the last person to see my son. And with you in there, Tony will be hard. He'll be more defensive in his answers. And the grandfather was very gracious. We started together, and then he left us alone. And I spoke to Tony man to man for 2 hours. And I asked him those tough questions. But the seminal moment in that meeting was we locked eyeballs. I'm looking in his eyes, and he's looking in my eyes. And he held that glance for what seemed like a very uncomfortable time. And I'm looking in his eyes to find a murderer, and I didn't. I was able to climb through his eyes and touch his humanity, that I got that the spark in him was no different than the spark in any one of you. I wasn't expecting that. He was polite, he was articulate, he was well-mannered, and he didn't portray any of the typical attitudes of a 19-year-old gang member. I could tell that my hand of forgiveness had also transformed him because he knew I'd forgiven him. I'd been working with his grandfather for over 4 years before I met him. He was not the same person. I stayed with him from age 19 to age 39, playing the fatherly role because he was born to a 15-year-old and his father was about the same age but shunned him, had no relationship with his biological father. And I stayed with him advocating for his release. Finally, in 2019, he went in front of the parole commissioner. I was at the parole hearing, which was a 7-hour, grueling. He cried a lot. We all cried. And every, there's a lot of altercations in prison. You can look at a guard the wrong way and you get punished. And he had some altercations, which is very hard to avoid. He's a good-looking young man in an adult prison. And then I was asked to speak, and at the end of the interrogation with Tony, I said to the commissioner, Tony has work to do, not behind bars. He's not the same person he was when he killed my son. He was 14 years old. The foundation reaches tens of thousands of kids every year. Release him, because we will hire him in the foundation, and I will guarantee his behavior. And I know that Tony can save a lot of other kids by sharing his testimony, because he's not about gangs and guns and drugs and violence, and he understands. And he wishes he could turn the clock back. Well, normally when you go in front of a parole hearing, you don't really win parole the first time. But the commissioner was in tears. He said, Mr. Khamisa, I've been doing this work for 25 years. I've never had the victim's father advocate for the release of the offender. Anyway, Tony won parole, 2019. So the last 5 years, he has been volunteering for the foundation. And it's his grandfather and I have done for 30 years. In fact, we're speaking together this Friday at a school in San Diego, in an inner city school. We're going to do 2 assemblies. And if you meet him, you would have no clue that this young man spent 25 years in a prison. So what's the message here? I know we've saved him, but think about how many he will save working for the foundation. I think that speaks loudly the power of forgiveness. And it's timely because the holidays are upon us. So I hope that when you leave this conference, that you take this message away from you, that forgiveness was the right choice for me. I could have gone the other way. What good would that have done? And by choosing forgiveness, we are saving lives, teaching nonviolence, and we are also creating a more peaceful school. Hopefully, there isn't enough of us practicing forgiveness, but it starts with you. And we all have a Tony in our lives. So I want to inspire you to look at that and see who is that person, and maybe open your hearts and minds to see if you can bring forgiveness in your life. It has brought me peace, and I pray it will bring the same to you. Thank you very much.